Deep in the shadow of the tall pines, a small figure collapsed onto the damp earth. 7-year-old Eli's injured leg throbbed beneath his tattered clothes, his mother's last cold words echoing in his head. If you can't keep up, you deserve what's coming to you. 3 days alone had passed, hunger gnawing at his empty stomach, when the sound of approaching footsteps sent a jolt of terror through his weakened body. Through a blurred gaze, Eli saw not the dangerous predator he feared, but a boy of perhaps 15, aged beyond his years, with eyes that had seen their share of hardship. The mountain boy knelt, his calloused hands gentle as they assessed Eli's wounds with practiced movements. No words were exchanged. None were needed in that moment of genuine human connection. What unseen scars did this mountain boy carry that allowed him to recognize another wounded soul so easily? Could someone who seemed so alone become the family Eli had never truly known? The mountain boy's calloused hands worked methodically, cleaning the gash on Eli's leg with water from a canteen. Eli flinched, awareness returning in painful waves. The older boy paused, his patient eyes waiting for Eli's nod before continuing. When he was finished, he lifted Eli onto his back with surprising strength and began walking deeper into the woods. "I'm Liam," he said finally, his voice hoarse from disuse. "My cabin's not far." Eli, too weak to protest, let his head fall as the forest grew denser around them. His mother's voice haunted his thoughts. "Only the strong survive, Eli. I won't carry dead weight." She had left him behind 3 days ago, when his leg was torn by barbed wire as they trespassed on a farm. The infection had set in quickly. The cabin appeared suddenly from between ancient pines. It was small but solid, with a stone chimney and walls of hand-hewn logs. The interior was simple: a single room with a wood stove, a rough-hewn table, 2 chairs, and a bed in the corner. Dried herbs hung from the rafters, filling the air with earthy scents. Liam laid Eli on the bed, covering him with a patchwork quilt. "You have a fever. You need medicine." He moved with quiet efficiency, crushing dried plants in a wooden mortar, adding water to make a bitter-smelling paste that he spread on Eli's wound. The relief was immediate, a cooling sensation replacing the burning ache. "Drink." Liam held a cup of steaming liquid to Eli's lips. It tasted of forest and earth, but Eli swallowed obediently. "Now sleep." As darkness claimed him, feverish dreams came in violent flashes. His mother's face, once beautiful, now twisted in revulsion. "Pathetic!" she spat, tossing the last water bottle at him. "Find your own way or die trying. I'm done looking after you." Her silhouette grew smaller and smaller as she walked away, never once looking back. Between these nightmares, Eli would wake to find Liam replacing the poultice, offering him water or broth. The older boy rarely spoke, but his hands were gentle and his vigil was unwavering. When Eli thrashed and cried out, Liam would sit beside him, awkwardly patting his shoulder until he quieted. On the third day, Eli awoke with a clear head. Sunlight streamed through a small window, dust motes dancing in the beam. He tried to sit up, his muscles protesting the movement. "Easy," Liam said, appearing from outside with an armful of firewood. "You've been very sick." Eli tensed, his instincts screaming danger despite the care he'd received. Strange place, strange boy. His mother's warnings about strangers echoed. "They'll take you away, lock you up. Is that what you want?" "Where am I?" Eli asked. his voice raspy from disuse. My cabin, middle of nowhere. Liam stacked the wood by the stove. Your leg's better, but not healed. The infection's gone, though. Eli pulled back the quilt to examine his leg. The red streaks were gone, leaving an ugly but clean wound covered in a green paste. Why? The question escaped before Eli could stop it. Liam looked confused. Why what? Why help me? Suspicion colored Eli's tone. Nobody helped without wanting something in return. That was the first rule his mother had taught him. Liam shrugged, uncomfortable with the question. Couldn't just leave you there. He pulled something from his pocket and set it on the table. It was a small wooden whistle, simply carved but beautiful in its function. I made this while you were sleeping. If you get lost or need help, blow on it. The sound carries in these mountains. The unexpected gift left Eli speechless. He'd never been given something made just for him. And there's stew, Liam said, changing the subject. Can you eat? Eli nodded, still processing the whistle. This strange boy, this unexpected kindness. As Liam ladled stew into a bowl, Eli noticed how thin the older boy was, all angles and lean muscle. His clothes were worn but clean, patched in several places. His movements were efficient, wasting neither energy nor resource. What do you want from me? Eli blurted, unable to stand the uncertainty. Liam froze, the bowl halfway to Eli. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe hurt. Nothing, he said finally. Just get better. He placed the bowl on Eli's lap and turned away, busying himself at the wood stove. Eli stared at his back, trying to detect the lie, the hidden agenda. But all he saw was a lonely boy who seemed as unaccustomed to company as Eli was to kindness. With trembling fingers, Eli lifted the spoon and took the first bite. The stew was simple, rabbit and wild roots. But to Eli's starving body, it tasted better than anything he could remember. Morning light filtered through the cabin's single window as Eli tested the weight on his injured leg. A sharp pain shot through him, but it was less intense than before. The mountain boy, Liam, had left at dawn, leaving a cup of water and a piece of hard bread by the bed. Eli's stomach rumbled, but his mind was fixed on escape. He couldn't stay here, couldn't trust this strange arrangement. He limped toward the door, gritting his teeth against the pain. His tattered backpack hung on a peg by the entrance, looking forlorn and empty. Outside, the sound of birdsong and rustling leaves filled the air. Freedom was just on the other side of that door. The cabin door swung open suddenly, making Eli stumble back. Liam stood there, arms full of kindling, surprise on his face quickly replaced by understanding. You won't make it, he said simply, dropping the wood to the floor. The nearest town is 12 miles away. Your leg won't hold for half that. Eli straightened, defiance masking his fear. I don't need your help. Never said you did. Liam moved past him to the wood stove, showing no anger or concern. But facts are facts. If that wound opens up again, the infection will come back. You won't last long. The practical, emotionless assessment deflated Eli's resistance more effectively than any argument could have. He slumped into a chair, defeated. Where are your parents? The question came out of him suddenly, a new awareness that he had seen no signs of anyone else. Liam paused for a moment. Don't have any. Does someone look after you? Eli pressed, gesturing at the tidy cabin. I look after myself. Liam struck a match, lighting the kindling in the stove. It's been 2 years since my grandmother died. The revelation hung in the air between them. Liam, not much older than Eli himself, alone in this remote cabin. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was all around them. The well-kept space, the medicinal herbs, the practical skills that had saved Eli's life. "You live here alone?" Eli couldn't hide his disbelief. Liam nodded, his expression unreadable as he reached for a worn leather journal on a shelf. He opened it, revealing pages of elegant script and careful drawings of plants. "My grandmother's journal. Everything she knew about surviving out here." He handled it with reverence. "She taught me what was important. The rest she left in here." Eli looked at the boy with new eyes. The self-sufficiency, the quiet confidence. It wasn't bravado, but hard-won necessity. "Why help me?" Eli asked again, softer this time. Liam gave a slight shrug. "My grandmother would have." He closed the journal carefully. "Stay until you can walk properly. Then you can decide." The practical, no-strings-attached offer was unlike anything Eli had ever known. His mother had taught him that kindness always came with conditions, that trust was for fools. Yet here was this strange boy, asking for nothing, offering safety for no apparent reason. They ate a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush in silence. The distance between them was as much about habit as it was physical. Eli had never learned the art of conversation. His mother had preferred silence unless she was angry. Liam seemed equally unaccustomed to company, choosing his few words with care. That night, as darkness consumed the forest, Eli's sleep was shattered by memories. His mother's boyfriends, each one meaner than the last. The endless moving, sleeping in cars or abandoned buildings. Her growing anger whenever he was sick, or tired, or just too much of a child. The final abandonment, replaying itself over and over. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat despite the cool air. Across the room, Liam slept on a pallet of blankets by the wood stove, having given the bed to Eli. At Eli's distress, the older boy stirred but didn't speak, offering silent witness instead of intrusive questions. In the faint glow of the embers, Eli studied his surroundings with greater clarity. The cabin was small but ingeniously organized. Every item had its place and purpose. Handmade traps and fishing gear hung from pegs. Jars of preserved food lined rough-hewn shelves. A collection of worn books occupied a corner shelf. Unexpected treasures in this wilderness home. For the first time since his mother had left, Eli felt the knot of panic in his chest loosen, just a little. He wasn't safe. He'd learned too well that safety was an illusion. But for tonight, at least, he could rest without the immediate threat of starvation or exposure. Outside, an owl called into the darkness. Inside, two lonely boys breathed the same air, temporary companions in their separate isolations. The days stretched into a week as Eli's wound gradually healed. The angry red lines faded, and he could put more weight on his leg each day. A tentative routine formed between the boys. Liam would rise before dawn to check his trap lines and forage. Eli would wake to find the cabin empty, save for a cup of water and whatever Liam had left for breakfast. They existed in parallel, sharing the space but little else. One afternoon, as rain pattered on the roof, Liam pulled a wooden box from under his pallet. Inside was a hand-carved chess set, the pieces worn smooth from years of use. "My grandfather made this," Liam said, setting the board on the table between them. "Do you know how to play?" Eli shook his head. His education had been as fragmented as his home life. A month in one school, weeks in another, long stretches of nothing in between. It's about thinking ahead, Liam explained, his voice losing some of its usual clipped tone as he described each piece and its movement. Eli listened intently, surprised by the older boy's patience. I'm 7, Eli said suddenly, after the explanation was done. The words felt strange, a piece of personal information offered freely. Liam nodded, accepting the revelation. 15, he replied after a moment. It was the first real conversation they'd had. The chess game progressed slowly, with Liam explaining strategy as they played. When Eli made a good move, capturing Liam's knight, the older boy's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. As the days went on, Eli watched Liam's survival routines with a growing fascination. The older boy moved through the forest like a shadow, reading tracks that were invisible to Eli's eyes. He knew which plants healed and which harmed. He could predict shifts in the weather, from subtle changes in the wind or the behavior of animals. It was a different kind of education than anything Eli had ever known. Show me, Eli asked one morning, watching as Liam readied a fishing line. Liam looked up, a flicker of surprise on his face. After a moment's hesitation, he shifted, making room on the bench. Watch first, he instructed, demonstrating the knot. Then you try. Eli's fingers fumbled with the unfamiliar motions, but Liam simply demonstrated again, breaking the process into smaller steps. There was no ridicule when Eli failed, no harsh words or impatient sighs like the ones his mother would have offered. Just quiet persistence, until Eli finally managed the knot on his own. The small victory felt enormous. That night, a particularly violent storm slammed into the cabin. The wind howled through the trees, and rain beat against the roof like angry fists. A sharp crack tore through the air, followed by the tremendous crash of a nearby falling tree. Eli shot upright, his heart hammering in his chest. In his panic, he knocked over the glass of water beside his bed. It toppled onto Liam's chessboard on the small table, snapping the carved head from the king. The piece rolled across the floor just as a flash of lightning illuminated the cabin. Horror washed over Eli. He scrambled for the broken piece, clutching it in his trembling fingers as the cabin door swung open. Liam stepped inside, soaked from checking on the woodpile. Eli flinched back, hiding the broken chess piece in his hand. His mother's reaction to accidents was swift and severe. He steeled himself for a similar treatment. Liam took in the scene at a glance. The spilled water, the damaged chessboard. His gaze shifted to Eli's defensive posture, the fear evident in his rigid body. Something in Liam's expression changed. Not anger, but a flicker of recognition. "Storm scare you?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral as he hung his wet coat on a peg. Eli held out his hand, the broken king resting on his palm. "I broke it," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean to." Liam approached slowly. He took the piece and examined it, turning it over in his calloused fingers. "Grandfather showed me how to fix these. We can mend it tomorrow." The simple acceptance, the utter absence of anger or punishment, left Eli disoriented. He watched, numb, as Liam wiped up the spilled water, gathered the chess pieces, and went about his normal nightly routine as if nothing of significance had happened. Later, lying in the dark and listening to the storm's fury gradually subside, Eli puzzled over the older boy's reaction. His mother would have screamed, maybe hit him, and would have certainly listed it as another failure in her litany of Eli's shortcomings. Liam had simply said, "We can fix it." The words echoed in Eli's mind as he drifted to sleep, unfamiliar, but somehow comforting. A scream tore through the cabin's silent darkness, jolting Liam from his sleep. Across the room, Eli was flailing against the blankets, fighting unseen enemies. "No, please." The boy's voice broke on the words, his small hands batting at the air. Liam was across the room in an instant, hesitating before placing a cautious hand on Eli's shoulder. "Hey, wake up." Eli's eyes flew open, wide with terror, before they focused on Liam's face. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by a wave of shame. He pulled away, curling into himself. "Sorry," he whispered. Liam sat on the edge of the bed, giving the younger boy space. "Bad one?" Eli nodded. Then, surprising them both, he spoke. "She left me at a gas station once. For 2 days." The words tumbled out into the darkness. "Said it was to teach me to be independent. I was 5. Liam absorbed this, his face unreadable in the faint light. "My grandmother raised me," he said after a long silence. "She was tough, but fair. Never cruel." "Where are your parents?" Liam shrugged. "Dad left before I can remember. Mom couldn't handle it." He gestured vaguely at himself. "Left me with my grandmother when I was 4. He visited sometimes. Then he stopped." The shared confidences hung in the air between them, neither boy accustomed to such openness. "Go back to sleep," Liam said finally, retreating to his own mattress. But the conversation had changed something between them. The next morning, Eli dug into his tattered backpack and pulled out a folded photograph, creased and grimy. He set it on the table as Liam prepared breakfast. "It's the only one I have," he explained when Liam glanced at it. The photo showed a baby, presumably Eli, in someone's arms. The face of the person holding him had been torn away, leaving only the outline of a torso and arms. "You rip it?" Liam asked, setting 2 bowls of porridge on the table. Eli shook his head. "She did," he said. He didn't need to see the face to know it was his mother. His voice was casual. The cruelty was so normalized it had lost its sting. Liam studied the photo, then carefully handed it back. His hand rested briefly on Eli's shoulder before he pulled away. An awkward but genuine gesture. Later that day, Liam took Eli outside to identify edible plants growing near the cabin. The younger boy's leg had healed enough for short walks, and he soaked up the knowledge eagerly. "This is burdock," Liam explained, pointing to a broad-leafed plant. "The roots are good food. The leaves can treat your skin if it gets irritated." Eli crouched beside him, memorizing the plant's appearance. "How do you know all this?" "My grandmother. She knew everything about these mountains." Pride shone in Liam's voice as he said his people had lived here for generations, before anyone else came. As they circled the cabin's perimeter, Eli worked up the courage to ask the question that had been bothering him. "Why do you live alone? Don't they look for kids with no parents?" Liam's face immediately shut down. "Social services," he said, the words clipped. "Foster care. I've been through it. I'm not going back." The vehemence in his tone silenced Eli's curiosity. Whatever Liam had endured in the system, it had driven him to choose solitude in the wilderness. That evening, as they ate rabbit stew by the light of a single lantern, Eli tested the boundaries in a different way. "We never stayed anywhere long," he said, picking up the thread of their earlier conversation without preamble. 2 weeks, maybe a month. Then she'd get restless or angry, or a boyfriend would kick us out." Liam listened in silence, understanding that Eli was processing his own history. Never had my own bed, Eli added, his eyes fixed on his bowl. Or enough food. You have both now, Liam said simply, for as long as you need it. The words weren't exactly an invitation to stay forever, but they weren't a limitation either. Eli felt something loosen in his chest. It wasn't exactly trust, but perhaps the precursor to it. That night, when the nightmares returned, Eli didn't scream, but Liam woke anyway, now attuned to the younger boy's distress. This time, instead of retreating after waking him, Liam dragged his own mattress closer to Eli's bed. Sometimes it helps not to be alone, he muttered, embarrassed by his own gesture. Eli didn't answer, but as his breathing evened out in the darkness, his small hand dangled over the edge of the bed, not quite touching, but open, reaching for the tenuous connection forming between two broken boys who had found each other in the vastness of the woods. Morning mist hung low over the pines as Eli followed Liam down a narrow trail. 3 weeks had passed since his arrival, and his leg had healed enough for longer expeditions. Today's destination was a creek where Liam set fish traps. Step where I step, Liam instructed, navigating the uneven ground. Your shoes won't last long out here. Eli looked down at his tattered sneakers, the sole of one flapping loose. Despite Liam's attempts to repair it with twine, they were falling apart. The older boy moved with a natural grace over the terrain, his worn moccasins silent on the forest floor. At the creek, Liam checked his traps. 2 held fat trout, which he transferred to a lined pocket in his pack. He showed Eli how to reset the mechanisms, explaining the design his grandmother had taught him. You try, he suggested, handing the materials to Eli. Eli's fingers fumbled with the unfamiliar task. The trap collapsed as he tried to secure it, splashing cold water on both of them. Eli tensed, anticipating ridicule. Instead, Liam's face broke into an unexpected laugh. It was a genuine sound that lit up his features, making him look his real age for the first time. After a moment of surprise, Eli joined in, the shared joy creating something new between them. Well, try again, Liam said, wiping his face. Took me dozens of tries to get it right. On the way back, Liam veered off the path, approaching a hollowed-out tree. From inside, he pulled a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Been saving this, he explained, unwrapping the package to reveal a small pair of moccasins. Made them from deerskin last winter. Was gonna trade them. He shrugged, offering them to Eli. Should fit you. Eli stared at the gift, speechless. The moccasins were beautifully made, the soft leather decorated with simple patterns on the sides. Try them on, Liam urged. Eli pulled off his ruined sneakers and slid his feet into the moccasins. They fit perfectly, the leather molding to his feet as if they were made for him. Thank you, he whispered, the words inadequate for the emotion behind them. Liam just nodded, wrapping Eli's old shoes in the cloth. Maybe there are parts we can use, he said practically. But his eyes held a glimmer of pleasure at Eli's reaction. That night, as they prepared dinner, Eli offered to help without being asked. He had been watching Liam closely and now mimicked his movements, carefully chopping wild onions to add to the fish stew. Liam didn't comment on the change, but he adjusted his position to give Eli better access to the work area. What's your real name? Eli asked suddenly. Liam can't be all of it. The older boy hesitated, his hands stilling over the fish he was cleaning. William, he admitted finally. William James Donovan. But no one's called me that since my grandmother died. He looked at Eli. I'm 15. For real. The confession of his full name felt significant, a truth offered where half-truths were the norm. "Why tell me now?" Eli asked, curious. Liam resumed his work. "Reckon you've earned it." Later, as they sat by the fire outside the cabin watching the stars appear, Eli's waking thoughts were invaded by the memories of his nightmares. He shivered, remembering his mother's abandonment, the days alone before Liam found him. "She didn't want me." He let the words slip out, torn from somewhere deep and wounded. "Never did." Liam remained silent, allowing the painful truth to exist without platitudes. "I tried to be good," Eli continued, tears now tracking silently down his face. "I tried to be quiet, to be helpful. Nothing ever worked." When the dam finally broke, Eli's sobs filled the night air. He curled in on himself, years of pent-up pain pouring out in agonizing waves. Liam watched, clearly uncomfortable with such raw emotion. Slowly, awkwardly, he moved closer, putting a hesitant arm around the younger boy's shoulders. The unexpected comfort only made Eli cry harder, but he leaned into Liam's side, accepting the clumsy solace. "It's not your fault," Liam said, his voice hoarse. "Some people just shouldn't be parents." When Eli's tears subsided, Liam added, "Winter comes fast up here. We need to get ready." The abrupt change of subject wasn't unkindness, but the older boy reaching the limit of his emotional capacity. The arm around Eli's shoulders remained, however. The physical connection held, even as the conversation shifted to practical matters. "Will you teach me?" Eli asked, wiping his face. "How to get ready?" Something like pride flickered in Liam's expression. "Yeah," he said. "I'll teach you." The words sounded like a pact, an acknowledgement that Eli was not just a temporary guest, but someone who might stay as the seasons turned. For the first time since his mother had driven away, Eli felt the fragile beginning of belonging. Eli woke before dawn to the sound of Liam's muffled voice pulling him from sleep. The older boy was by the wood stove, talking quietly to himself as he organized their supplies. "Maybe enough jerky, but the flour's low. Berries won't last. We need more fish before the creek freezes over." Concern laced the whispered inventory. Eli lay still, feigning sleep, as he listened to Liam's hushed anxieties about their supplies. The casual slip, "Our food, not my food," did not escape him. When Liam left for his morning patrol, Eli slipped out of his cot. He had been in the cabin for nearly 5 weeks now, his leg fully healed. He knew the way to the creek. He'd watched Liam check the fish traps a dozen times. Today, he would contribute. The forest felt different without Liam beside him. Bigger, more mysterious. Eli followed the trail carefully, recognizing landmarks the older boy had pointed out. The creek appeared ahead, sunlight glinting on its surface. Confidence buoyed him as he approached the first trap. Empty. The second trap, too. Frustration gnawed at him as he peered into the clear water. Fish darted between the rocks downstream, tantalizingly close but beyond the trap's reach. Eli remembered how Liam sometimes waded into the creek, herding the fish toward the traps with careful, sweeping motions. He kicked off his moccasins, rolled up his trousers, and stepped into the icy water. The shock of it stole his breath, but determination drove him forward. He moved slowly, mimicking Liam's technique, guiding the fish toward the traps. Success felt imminent until his foot slipped on a moss-slicked rock. He pitched forward, and the current snatched him instantly. Panic exploded in his chest as the water closed over his head. He thrashed, his body banging painfully against rocks. A fallen tree loomed ahead, its branches reaching into the water like grasping fingers. Eli's shirt snagged on a submerged limb, holding him under as the current pressed down. Darkness crowded the edges of his vision when, suddenly, strong hands gripped his shoulders, yanking him upward. He broke the surface, gasping, to find Liam's terrified face inches from his own. "What were you thinking?" Liam demanded, his voice trembling with fear as he dragged Eli to the bank. "You could have drowned." Eli coughed, sputtering water, too shaken to reply. Liam stripped off his wet shirt and wrapped Eli in his own dry coat. "You don't go to the creek alone." Liam's fear was hardening into anger. "Ever. Do you hear me?" The outburst, so unlike Liam's usual quiet demeanor, silenced Eli. They walked back to the cabin in a tense quiet, Eli shivering despite the coat. Inside, Liam stoked the fire and found dry clothes. Only when Eli was warm and the immediate danger had passed did the older boy speak again. "Why?" The single word held more confusion than accusation. "I heard you this morning," Eli admitted, his voice small, "talking about the food. I wanted to help." Understanding dawned on Liam's face, followed by something like regret. "I didn't mean for you to worry," he said finally. "We're fine, just planning ahead." "But I'm eating your food," Eli insisted. "I should help." Liam's expression softened. "You will, but some things are dangerous until you learn them properly." He reached under his cot and pulled out a sheathed hunting knife. The handle was worn smooth, the blade well cared for. It was clearly one of Liam's most valued possessions. "My grandmother gave this to me when I was 10, he explained, turning it over in his hands. "She said I'd earned the right to carry it. She made me promise 3 things: to never use it in anger, to always respect its danger, and to only wield it after I'd been properly trained." He held the knife out to Eli, who stared in disbelief. "I'll teach you," Liam continued, "how to use it safely, how to clean it, how to hunt with it. But you have to promise the same 3 things." The offer was more than just a tool. It was trust, respect, responsibility. Eli swallowed hard. "I promise." Liam nodded, satisfied. "We'll start with the basics, and you never go anywhere dangerous alone. That's the rule. We look out for each other." The declaration now hung between them, an acknowledgement of their evolving bond. Later that night, as they prepared dinner together, Eli worked up his courage. "I never thanked you," he said quietly, "for finding me that day. For everything since." Liam focused on the vegetables he was chopping. "You don't have to." Still, Eli moved closer and did something that surprised them both. He wrapped Liam in a clumsy but heartfelt hug. The older boy froze, clearly unaccustomed to such physical displays of affection. Slowly, his free arm came up to rest on Eli's shoulders, completing the embrace for a brief moment before they pulled apart, both pretending to be absorbed in their dinner preparations. But something fundamental had shifted. The cabin felt warmer somehow, as if the simple gesture had kindled a different kind of fire, one that burned against the coming winter and the loneliness they had both known for too long. Snow blanketed the pine boughs outside the cabin window. 3 months had passed since Eli had collapsed in the woods. The cabin, once Liam's solitary refuge, now showed signs of dual occupancy. A second mug by the sink, 2 pairs of boots by the door, Eli's charcoal sketches tacked up next to Liam's diagrams of plants. I need to go into town, Liam announced over breakfast. For a few supplies we can't get out here. Eli's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Liam's rare supply runs had taken on a mythical quality, glimpses of a distant outside world. Can I come? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Liam shook his head. Too risky. You stay here. Disappointment washed over Eli's face, followed quickly by apprehension. He'd never been left alone in the cabin before. I'll be back before dark, Liam promised, reading his expression. You know the drills. Keep the fire going. Stay inside. Whistle if there's real trouble. Eli nodded, trying to look brave despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. Liam spent the next hour reviewing safety procedures and leaving enough firewood to last the day. His preparations were thorough, but they couldn't quite mask his own unease at leaving Eli behind. I'll be fine, Eli assured him, sensing Liam's reluctance. I can practice my trapping knots. Liam ruffled Eli's hair, a gesture that had become more natural between them, then shouldered his pack. Lock the door after me. The cabin fell unnervingly silent after Liam left. Eli busied himself with tasks they had practiced together, tending the fire, splitting kindling, practicing knots. He worked on a small project he'd been hiding from Liam, a crudely carved wooden figurine, a thank you gift. By midday, he had dragged Liam's chair to the window, watching the snow swirl between the trees, wondering what the town was like, how far away it was, who lived there. His mother had always avoided small towns, preferring the anonymity of big cities where her behavior drew less attention. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, the anxiety returned. What if Liam didn't come back? What if he decided Eli was too much trouble? The rational part of his mind dismissed the thoughts. Liam had proven himself trustworthy, but old fears were hard to shake. The crunch of approaching footsteps sent Eli scrambling to the door. Liam stood there, shaking snow from his boots, his pack full. A wave of relief, so intense it was almost embarrassing, washed over Eli. Everything okay? Liam asked, his gaze sweeping the cabin in a quick, assessing glance. Eli nodded, helping unpack the precious supplies. Flour, salt, matches, some medical supplies, twine, and two unexpected treasures, a small bag of hard candy and a worn book of wildlife stories. Liam's movements were quick, tense. Something beyond the usual fatigue of a town trip seemed to cling to him. What is it? Eli finally asked as they put the goods away. Liam paused, deliberating. Overheard some talk in town. He rarely spoke of his visits, making this feel significant. About a missing kid. Eli froze. Me? Maybe. Liam continued to unpack. Right age. They said he vanished from a campground about 20 miles south, 3 months back. A chill snaked down Eli's spine. That wasn't what happened. My mom left me. She wouldn't report me missing. Might not have been her, Liam reasoned. Could have been the campground staff. The realization that authorities might be looking settled heavily in the small cabin. If they found Eli, there would be questions. Questions about where he'd been, who he'd been with. They'd take me away, Eli whispered. The nameless they had featured prominently in his mother's threats, faceless authorities who would separate them. Now, ironically, it was the threat of separation from Liam that terrified him. And you? Eli's eyes widened with a sudden, dawning horror. They'd blame you. They'd think you took me. Liam didn't contradict him. At 15, harboring a 7-year-old runaway, or what would look like an abducted child, would have serious consequences. "We'll just be more careful," Liam said finally. "No tracks near the main trails. No smoke during the day. Low profile." From a shelf in the corner, he retrieved a battered radio, one of his few connections to the outside world, used sparingly to save batteries. He switched it on, twisting the dial until voices crackled through the static. "Local station," he explained. "Might mention any search parties." They listened together as darkness fell outside, the radio crackling between them like a small fire. No mention of a missing boy came through the static, but the news connected them, however tenuously, to the world beyond their isolated haven. That night, they established a new routine. After dinner, Liam would turn on the radio for 30 minutes, just long enough to catch the headlines without draining the batteries. It became their window to a world that now represented both curiosity and threat, its staticky voices a reminder of the complexities that waited beyond the protective embrace of the forest. Autumn painted the forest in brilliant shades of orange and red. Inside the cabin, Liam sat at the table with Eli, a worn book open between them. Eli traced the letters with his finger, sounding out the words carefully. "Conservation," he read slowly. "What does that mean?" "Taking care of something so it lasts," Liam explained. "Like how we only take what we need from the forest." Reading lessons had become part of their nightly routine. Eli's education had been spotty at best before his mother left him, but he proved a quick study. Liam, in turn, discovered an unexpected knack for teaching, drawing on his grandmother's patient methods. Later that night, Eli helped Liam create a calendar on a piece of birch bark, marking the days with charcoal. "Why are we doing this?" Eli asked, watching Liam make precise hash marks. "Winter's coming. We need to track food stores, weather patterns." Liam paused. "And days?" Eli asked, hopeful. "Like birthdays?" Liam nodded, hesitating before he asked, "When's yours?" "November 12th, Eli replied, then added proudly, "I'll be 8. Liam carefully circled the date on the bark calendar. "That soon?" he observed. Eli stared at the mark, something vulnerable crossing his face. "My mom never remembered. She said it wasn't worth celebrating." Liam's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "It's worth celebrating," he said firmly, adding another mark at the bottom of the calendar. "And we'll know exactly when it comes." That night, Eli's sleep was shattered by a nightmare more vivid than usual. He woke up screaming, images of his mother finding him and dragging him from the cabin still seared in his mind. Liam was at his side in an instant, alert despite the late hour. "She found me," Eli gasped, clutching Liam's sleeve. "She said I belonged to her." Tears streamed down his face. "She said she'd hurt you for keeping me." "It was just a dream," Liam soothed, though his own eyes darted to the bolted door. "She doesn't know where you are." "But what if she looks? What if she finds us?" Liam sat on the edge of the cot, unnaturally still. "Do you think she's looking?" Eli thought about it, remembering his mother's last words, her back already turned as she walked away. "No," he admitted quietly. "She wanted to be rid of me." The hard truth hung between them, somehow less painful for having been spoken aloud. Liam nodded, accepting the assessment as fact. "So we're safe from her at least. But not from the others," Eli insisted, the conversation about the authorities still fresh in his mind. "What's going to happen when winter comes?" Will we have enough food? The question betrayed his growing awareness of their precarious situation. Liam ran a hand through his hair, his expression grave. I've been thinking about that, he admitted. Our supplies are holding up, but winter is long. Game gets scarce. And the cabin, it's small for two. Fear flashed in Eli's eyes. You don't want me to stay? That's not what I said, Liam answered quickly. I'm just saying it's going to be hard sometimes. The cold, the hunger. Maybe. He looked directly into Eli's eyes. I need to know you understand. This life isn't easy. I know, Eli said, his voice earnest. I can help more. I'm learning. Liam watched him for a moment, then nodded. You are. But there's something else. He hesitated, choosing his words with care. I've been thinking we should have a plan, just in case something happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you, Eli protested at once. Probably not, Liam agreed. But smart people prepare. The conversation shifted to practical matters. The location of the nearest town, which direction to walk, who might help a child alone. Eli listened with a growing knot of dread in his stomach, unwilling to even consider a future without Liam. I don't want a plan, he finally declared. I want to stay with you. Liam's expression softened for a moment. That's the main plan, he assured Eli. The others are just backups. The next day brought an unexpected early snowfall, a stark warning of the changing season. They worked together to ready the cabin, patching small cracks in the walls, chopping more firewood, and foraging for the last of the mushrooms and nuts. Eli watched Liam demonstrate how to check for weak spots in the roof, memorizing every movement. The lessons felt different now, imbued with a greater purpose. They weren't just skills for the present, but a guarantee for the future. That night, as Liam etched another day onto their bark peel calendar, Eli realized the small sheet represented more than just passing time. It was a declaration of continuity, a belief in shared days to come. The simple marks transformed abstract time into something tangible, something they were building together. For a boy who had lived moment to moment, never sure where he would sleep the next night, this humble calendar represented a revolutionary concept, planning for a future that included him. The morning of November 12th arrived with an immaculate blanket of snow covering the forest. Eli awoke to find the cabin empty, Liam's bed already made, which was unusual. A small note sat on the table, written in Liam's careful script. Be back soon. Stay inside. Eli fed the wood stove and waited, his curiosity mounting. When Liam finally returned, snowflakes melting in his dark hair, his pack was full and oddly shaped. Happy birthday, he said simply, setting his load on the floor. Eli blinked, momentarily speechless. Even though they had marked the calendar, he hadn't truly believed anyone would remember, let alone celebrate. From the pack, Liam produced a small cake. It was nothing like the elaborate confections Eli had seen in shop windows during his life with his mother, but a rustic, heartfelt creation made from hoarded flour, preserved berries, and precious sugar. Made it at dawn, Liam explained, uncharacteristically sheepish. My grandmother's recipe, from the journal. Eli stared at the cake, a lump forming in his throat. I've never had a birthday cake before. Something flashed in Liam's eyes, anger at the injustice, quickly replaced by resolve. Well, you have one now. The simple breakfast transformed into a celebration. Liam had even fashioned a crude beeswax candle, which Eli blew out with ceremonial solemnity. "There's one more thing," Liam said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden figure, a carefully carved fox, its clever face and alert ears captured with surprising artistry. "I whittled it last week, while you were asleep." Eli accepted the gift with reverent hands. The wood was smooth, polished by hours of patient work. It was the first birthday present he could ever remember receiving. "It's perfect," he whispered, tracing a finger over the fox's pointed ears. "Thank you." The day continued with small indulgences, an exemption from his regular chores, an extra helping of dried apple at lunch, stories from Liam's own childhood that he rarely shared. By evening, Eli's face ached from smiling, a sensation so unfamiliar it was almost uncomfortable. As they sat by the fire, Liam switched on the radio for the nightly news. Through the static, a clear broadcast came through, continuing community alerts. Authorities are still seeking information regarding 7-year-old Elias Turner, missing since August from the Pine Ridge campground. The child is described as having dark brown hair and is approximately 4 feet tall. Anyone with information should contact the sheriff's department immediately. The celebratory atmosphere vanished. Eli's eyes flew wide with alarm, meeting Liam's tense gaze from across the room. "That's my name," he whispered. "My real name." Liam switched off the radio, his mind clearly racing. They're still looking? After all this time? What do we do? Fear made Eli's voice thin. Liam paced the small cabin, uncharacteristically agitated. "I need to think." Eli watched him, clutching the wooden fox tightly in his hand. "If they find me, they'll take me away, I know it." Liam stopped pacing, a decision crystallizing in his expression. Maybe that would be better." The words hit Eli like a physical blow. "What?" "A proper school, regular meals, a real family." Liam's voice was strained, pained. "Things I can't give you." "You're my family," Eli shouted, surprising them both. "I don't want anyone else." "It's not that simple," Liam argued, though his resolve was clearly wavering. "The authorities would never—" "You'd let them take me," Eli accused, each word laced with betrayal. Liam knelt in front of Eli, his hands on the boy's shoulders. "I'm trying to think of what's best for you." Tears streamed down Eli's face. "You promised. You made the calendar. You gave me this." He thrust the wooden fox forward. "Was it all a lie?" The accusations struck home. Liam's shoulders slumped. "Not lies. Never lies between us." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "But I worry. About food, about the winters, about you growing up hidden like this." "I was never happy before I met you," Eli said, the simple truth cutting through Liam's practical concerns. "I was never safe. I never belonged anywhere." Something shifted in Liam's expression. Resignation, acceptance, perhaps even relief. "I don't know what's right," he admitted, "but I know I don't want to lose you either." The confession was a visible effort, pride surrendering to attachment. Eli lunged forward, wrapping his thin arms around Liam's waist in a fierce hug. "Then don't let them take me," he pleaded. "We're good together. We take care of each other." Liam returned the embrace, resting his chin on Eli's head. "We are," he agreed softly. and we'll figure this out. Together, I promise. The birthday that had begun with such unprecedented joy ended with a new, tentative understanding. The world beyond their forest shelter posed a threat to their fragile family, but it was a threat they would face united, the lost boy and his unlikely guardian, bound by choice, not by blood. Winter descended on the forest with a relentless intensity. Snow piled up against the cabin walls, and frost etched intricate patterns on the window panes. Inside, Liam and Eli had settled into a rhythm, conserving firewood, melting snow for water, and rationing their precious food stores. "How long until spring?" Eli asked one evening, watching Liam check their dwindling supplies. "3 months, give or take," Liam replied, marking another day on the bark calendar. The simple record had expanded, now tracking weather patterns, animal sightings, and their consumption of food. Eli frowned at a sound from Liam, a short, hacking cough that had started a week ago and seemed to be getting worse. "Your cough is worse." Liam waved off the concern. "It's just the dry air from the fire." But that night, Eli woke to the sound of Liam coughing violently, trying to muffle the sound in his blanket. By morning, a worrying flush colored Liam's cheeks, and his movements were slow. "You're sick," Eli stated, anxiety sharpening his voice. "I'm fine," Liam insisted, but his body betrayed him as another coughing fit bent him over. The memory of his grandmother's fatal illness clearly haunted him. He had shared the story in fragments over the months, how pneumonia had taken her during a particularly harsh winter, how he had failed to get help in time, and how he had buried her himself rather than alert the authorities. Eli took charge with a surprising authority, ordering Liam to bed and grabbing the grandmother's journal. He had learned to read from its pages, and now he scanned them for remedies, his finger tracing the faded script. "It says here pine needle tea helps a cough," he announced, determination overriding his limited reading skills. "I can make that." Liam watched from the bed, a mixture of worry and pride on his face, as Eli carefully followed the instructions, brewing the bitter tea exactly as described. The role reversal was both unsettling and poignant, the cared for becoming the caregiver. Over the next few days, Liam's condition fluctuated. Some mornings he seemed well enough for basic chores. On others, the fever kept him bedridden. Eli managed admirably, applying everything Liam had taught him, keeping the fire stoked, preparing simple meals, and even venturing out to check the nearby trap lines under Liam's careful guidance. During a lucid evening, Liam pulled a folded paper from beneath his mattress, a map worn soft at the creases from repeated study. "I need to show you something," he said, his voice raspy from coughing. He spread the map on the blankets, pointing to the marks he'd made. "We're here. The town is about 12 miles east, but never go this way." His finger traced a route marked with red X's. "Ranger posts. They patrol even in winter." Eli studied the map intently, committing the markings to memory. Something in Liam's urgency frightened him. "You're going to get better," he insisted, misreading the purpose of the lesson. Liam nodded, but continued the instruction. "The green marks are clean water sources. The blue circles are good foraging spots. The black X's are danger points, old traps, unstable ground, wasp nests in the summer." The map was the culmination of years of wilderness knowledge, now being passed to Eli with meticulous care. It wasn't just information. It was a legacy of survival. That night, as Liam's fever climbed again, Eli found himself thinking of the grandmother he'd never met. Had she felt this same helpless fear, watching someone she loved suffer? Had she passed her knowledge to Liam with the same desperate hope that it would sustain him? Tell me more about her, Eli asked, bathing Liam's forehead with a cool cloth. Your grandmother. Between feverish breaths, Liam shared memories he usually kept guarded. How she taught him to track animals by their unique prints. How she showed him which moss was best for dressing wounds. How she would sing old songs in a language she said belonged to their ancestors. She used to say, "We don't own anything," Liam murmured, "except the stories we keep and the skills we master." I'll remember everything you teach me, Eli promised fiercely. Everything. The declaration seemed to ease something in Liam. He reached for his journal and pressed it into Eli's hands. Your reading is good enough now. 1 page a night. Learn it all. It was the closest Liam had come to acknowledging the possibility of his own mortality. Eli clutched the journal, raw determination replacing his fear. You're going to teach me yourself, he insisted. You have to get better. Liam managed a weak smile. That's the plan. But smart people prepare, Eli finished for him, the oft-repeated lesson now a mantra between them. That night, after Liam finally fell into a restless sleep, Eli whispered a word he'd never said aloud before, testing its weight and truth. Home. The cabin, this place, this life with Liam had become his home, and he would fight with everything he had to preserve it. Liam's fever spiked dangerously on the 4th night of his illness. His breathing grew labored, each intake a painful, rattling wheeze that shook his frame. Eli tried every remedy from the grandmother's journal: pine needle tea, mustard poultices, herbal steam, but nothing could break the fever's hold. Do you need medicine? Liam gasped, the words caught between coughing fits that left him trembling with exhaustion. Eli's heart hammered with fear. From town, I can't leave you alone. Under the bed, Liam managed to say. Emergency box. Eli scrambled under Liam's cot and found a small wooden box he had never seen before. Inside were items Liam had apparently kept hidden. A few dollars, a flashlight with fresh batteries, waterproof matches, and a small pill bottle with a pharmacy label. Antibiotics, Liam explained, pointing weakly at the bottle. The town doctor saved some from last time. The label was faded, but still legible. Take 1 capsule twice daily until gone. Only 3 pills remained. Eli helped Liam swallow one with a sip of water, his anxiety mounting at how sick Liam must be to reveal this secret stash. As Eli slid the box back into place, his fingers brushed against a folded paper tucked into its side. He pulled it out, curious. It was an official-looking document, with a government seal. The header read, Department of Children's Services, and below it, Missing Person Report, William James Donovan. Eli stared at the paper, shock numbing his thoughts. The description perfectly matched Liam, though the age was wrong now. The report detailed a foster care placement from which William had run away following allegations of abuse. He had been listed as missing for over 3 years. With trembling hands, Eli dug deeper into the box, finding more papers, court documents, newspaper clippings about a foster home abuse case, a social worker's business card with a number scrawled on the back. The evidence painted a dramatically different picture from the vague history Liam had shared. Liam hadn't been left by his parents to be raised by his grandmother, as he'd claimed. He'd been in foster care. He had run away. He was officially a missing child, just like Eli. A weak voice cut through his thoughts. Did you find it? Liam's feverish eyes were fixed on the papers in Eli's hands. "You lied to me," Eli whispered, his voice laced with confusion and hurt. Liam closed his eyes briefly. Not all of it was a lie. The grandmother was real. I lived with her after I ran, but she wasn't your grandmother. Not by blood. She found me in her garden, stealing food. She took me in, taught me everything. A coughing fit racked his body. When it subsided, he continued, his voice even weaker. When they came looking for me, she told them I was her grandson. She protected me. The revelation hit Eli with the force of a physical blow. Liam's story mirrored his own in ways he had never imagined. Both abandoned, both found by someone who chose them. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Eli asked, though the answer felt obvious even as he said it. "I wanted to protect you from that." Liam's face twisted with memories he couldn't suppress. "My real parents left me when I was 3. The homes after that. The last one was bad. When grandmother died, I couldn't go back. I wouldn't survive it." Eli understood with a terrible clarity. Liam hadn't taken him in just out of kindness. He had recognized a reflection of his own abandonment, his own desperate need for safety. "You need a real doctor," Eli said, his focus snapping back to the immediate crisis. "These pills aren't enough." "No doctors," Liam insisted weakly. "They'll take you. Take me back. You could die." Eli's voice broke on the words. "I'd rather die free than live in a cage." Liam's convictions seemed to burn hotter than his fever. Eli paced the small cabin, the documents clutched in his hand, torn between honoring Liam's wishes and the terror of his worsening condition. What if the antibiotics didn't work? What if Liam died like his grandmother, alone in this remote cabin? The harsh reality of their isolation had never felt so dangerous. 2 boys hidden from the world, one of them so desperately ill. The romantic notion of self-sufficiency crumbled under the weight of medical need. As night deepened, Liam's fever continued to climb. His skin was scorching to the touch, and his breathing grew more labored. Eli applied cool compresses, forced water between his cracked lips, and recited passages from the journal, as if the words themselves held healing power. Near midnight, Liam fell into a restless sleep. Eli sat beside him, watching every ragged breath, terrified each one would be the last. The responsibility was crushing, a child forced to make a life or death decision. Stay and honor Liam's wishes, possibly watching him die, or seek help and betray the only person who had ever truly cared for him. Outside, the snow fell without a sound, blanketing the forest in a silent, white shroud. Inside, Eli made his decision. The antiseptic smell of the hospital corridor burned Eli's nostrils as he sat in a plastic chair, his feet dangling high above the floor. A plastic bracelet was cinched around his wrist. His name, Elias Turner, printed in bold black letters. A social worker named Ms. Bennett sat beside him, a clipboard balanced on her lap. 3 days had passed since Eli's desperate choice. He had waited until Liam slipped into a feverish sleep, then bundled himself in layers, tucked the map inside his coat, and ventured into the snowy night. The journey had been an ordeal, 19 kilometers through knee-deep snow, guided only by Liam's meticulous map and his own grim determination. By dawn, half frozen and exhausted, he had stumbled upon a trapper checking his lines. The man had recognized the emergency at once, radioing for help and wrapping Eli in his own heavy coat. Within hours, Rescue teams had reached the cabin, finding Liam unconscious and critically ill. Now Liam lay in a hospital room, diagnosed with pneumonia, receiving intravenous antibiotics. The doctors said he would recover, though they exchanged meaningful glances when they discussed his state of malnutrition. "Can I see him yet?" Eli asked Ms. Bennett for the third time that hour. "Soon," she promised, her kind eyes at odds with the professional distance in her voice. "The doctors are still with him, and the police need to ask him a few questions first." Police. The word sent a familiar dread coiling in Eli's chest. Though he'd been careful to portray Liam as his rescuer, not his captor, the adults kept whispering about Stockholm Syndrome when they thought he couldn't hear. Eli had been placed temporarily with a foster family, the Johnsons. They were kind, but their house felt alien after months in the cabin. Too bright, too loud, full of rules he didn't understand. A doctor approached. "Elias, you can see William now, but only for 15 minutes. Eli shot to his feet. In a small room, Liam lay tethered to beeping machines. His face was pale against the white pillows, but his breathing was noticeably easier. "Hey," Eli whispered, approaching the bed. Liam's eyes fluttered open, relief washing over his features. "I'm sorry," Eli blurted out, the guilt overwhelming him. "I had to get help, you were dying." Liam's hand moved weakly toward him. "You saved my life." The simple acknowledgement eased some of Eli's remorse. "They're calling you William." "It's my legal name." Liam's voice was resigned. "They know who I am, who we both are." Ms. Bennett stood near the door, observing. Eli leaned closer. "They put me with a foster family, the Johnsons, just for now." A pain that had nothing to do with illness flickered across Liam's face. "They're going to split us up." "I won't let them," Eli promised fiercely. Their time was over too quickly. As Ms. Bennett led Eli from the room, Liam called out, "Remember what we learned?" Eli called back, "Everything!" The days blurred. Eli answered endless questions from social workers, police, and psychologists. He told his story carefully, emphasizing Liam's care and teaching, downplaying the hardship. A week after the rescue, Ms. Bennett arrived at the Johnsons' house with news. "We've located your mother," she said gently. "She's in Arizona." Eli's heart leaped. "Does she want me back?" Ms. Bennett hesitated. "Eli, your mother legally relinquished her parental rights almost a year ago. She signed papers giving up custody before she left you." The revelation should have hurt more. Instead, Eli felt a strange relief. The abandonment hadn't been impulsive. It had been planned. She was never coming back. "So what happens to me now?" he asked, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "You'll remain in care while we find a permanent home." She paused. "As for William—" "Liam," Eli corrected automatically. "Liam," she amended. "His situation is complicated. He's still a minor and requires guardianship." "We need to stay together," Eli insisted. "He's my family now." Ms. Bennett looked at him thoughtfully. "It's not common to place children with such an age gap together, but—" She made a note on her clipboard. "I know a couple, experienced foster parents. They might be willing to take you both on, temporarily, while we sort things out." Hope flickered in Eli's chest. "Both of us, together?" "It's a long shot," she cautioned. "The Millers have a strong track record with trauma cases. I'll speak with them today." After she left, Eli touched the hospital bracelet still on his wrist. The plastic band represented everything he and Liam had tried to escape. The system, institutions, rules. And yet, somehow, within those constraints, a small possibility had emerged. Not freedom, but maybe a new kind of safety, one where they wouldn't have to face the wilderness alone. The Miller's home was on the outskirts of town, a modest two-story house with a wraparound porch and a large yard that backed onto the woods. It was nothing like the cabin, yet something about the nearby trees made Eli's shoulders relax as Ms. Bennett's car pulled into the driveway. "They've fostered over 20 children in the last decade," Ms. Bennett explained. "Several sibling groups." Though not technically brothers, Eli and Liam had been granted a supervised visit. Liam had been discharged 2 days prior to a temporary group home. Eli saw him immediately, sitting stiffly on the porch steps. He looked different in borrowed clothes and a neat haircut, but his eyes were the same, watchful, assessing. "Liam!" Eli broke protocol, running ahead before Ms. Bennett could stop him. Liam shot to his feet, his face breaking into relief as Eli crashed into him. His arms wrapped around the younger boy in a protective hug that spoke volumes to the observing adults. Inside, the Millers were waiting. Robert and Sarah, both in their late 40s, with kind faces that showed character. Sarah's hair was prematurely gray, and Robert walked with a slight limp. "Welcome, boys," Sarah said, her voice warm but not overly effusive. "We've made up rooms for you both upstairs." Liam remained silent, instinctively scanning the exits. Eli stood close, his proximity a silent comfort. The visit proceeded cautiously. A tour, a simple lunch, guided conversation. The Millers explained they were former teachers who had started fostering after learning they couldn't have biological children. "We believe every child deserves safety and respect," Robert said, his steady gaze including both boys. "No one gets hit here. No one goes hungry. Everyone has privacy and a voice in household decisions." Liam's skepticism was a tangible thing, a wall between them and this new hope. But Eli found himself wanting to believe. The Millers didn't press for answers or demand immediate trust. They simply presented their home and their routines with a straightforward honesty. After lunch, while the adults discussed logistics, Eli and Liam were given 15 minutes together in the backyard. They drifted to the farthest corner, near the tree line, where a wooden swing hung from a massive oak. "What do you think?" Eli asked, anxiously studying Liam's closed-off expression. Liam's fingers traced patterns on the swing's wooden seat. "They seem okay. For now. Mrs. Bennett says they can take both of us." Hope and weariness warred in Liam's eyes. "Don't get your hopes up, Eli. The system makes promises it can't keep." "But what if they keep this one?" Eli pressed. "What if we could stay together?" Liam sighed, his gaze wandering to the woods beyond the yard. "It wouldn't be like before. Rules, school, people watching us all the time." "But we'd have each other," Eli insisted. "And real food, and doctors when we needed them." "I know." Liam's voice softened. "I know it's better for you here." The implication hung in the air, unspoken. Liam would sacrifice his own preferences for Eli's well-being. Before they could argue further, the adults called them back inside. 3 days later, Mrs. Bennett arrived at the Johnsons' house with paperwork in hand. The Millers had agreed to take both boys, pending court approval. Eli would move in immediately. Liam would join him as soon as the legal hurdles were cleared. "There's something else you should know," Mrs. Bennett added, her expression turning serious. "Liam's previous foster family, the one he ran from, has filed an objection. They're claiming they want him back." Fear tightened its grip on Eli's stomach. But they hurt him. He told me. We know, she assured him. There's a paper trail documenting their unsuitability. But the legal process takes time, and they have the right to a hearing. The day Eli moved into the Miller house, he carried his few belongings in a donated backpack, spare clothes from the Johnsons, the wooden fox Liam had carved for him, and a copy of the petition the Millers had filed to become his foster parents. Sarah had given it to him as a gesture of transparency, explaining each section as she would to an adult. That night, in a room with real curtains and a lamp that didn't flicker, Eli carefully placed Liam's carved fox on the windowsill. From there, it faced the woods beyond the yard, as if standing sentinel until its creator could join them. Sarah found him there, staring out into the darkness. It's hard being apart from him, she observed, not as a question. Eli nodded, his eyes stinging with unshed tears. He'll be here soon, Sarah promised, her voice carrying a quiet conviction. Robert and I have good lawyers. We understand what you two mean to each other. She left a legal document on his nightstand, a formal petition for guardianship of both boys. The Millers' signatures were already there, waiting only for a judge's approval to make their placement official. A promise written in the formal language of courts and systems, but a promise nonetheless. The courthouse loomed, its stone steps worn smooth by decades of anxious feet. Eli tugged at the collar of his new button-down shirt, the first one he'd ever owned, as he followed the Millers inside. Mrs. Bennett was waiting in the atrium, her usual clipboard replaced by a thick folder of documents. There you are, she greeted them, her eyes kind as she took in Eli's obvious nervousness. Liam is already inside with his caseworker. 2 weeks had passed since Eli had moved in with the Millers. 2 weeks of proper meals, regular showers, and nights spent staring at the empty bed across the hall. As kind as the Millers had proven to be, Eli couldn't settle without Liam. The polished wooden benches of the courtroom felt cold through Eli's new pants. As they waited for the judge, Eli scanned the room until he spotted Liam, sitting stiffly beside another social worker. Their eyes met across the room, and a world of unspoken communication passed between them. A side door opened, and everyone rose as the judge entered. She was an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. As the proceedings began, Eli's attention fixed on a couple seated near the front. The Marshalls, Liam's former foster parents. The woman's hair was perfectly styled, her clothes expensive, while the man's suit and tie projected respectability and success. Nothing about their appearance hinted at the cruelty Liam had described. Your Honor, the Marshal's lawyer began, my clients have been unfairly maligned. They opened their home to a troubled child who ran away rather than accept necessary discipline. They have since completed additional parenting courses and wish to mend what they see as a familial rift. Eli felt his hands clench into fists. The lawyer's smooth words painted Liam as the problem, his escape as delinquency rather than survival. The court-appointed lawyer for Liam stood next. Your Honor, the documented concerns regarding the Marshall placement were significant. William suffered physical and emotional abuse under their care, which led to his desperate choice to run away. His subsequent time in an isolated environment, while concerning, demonstrates remarkable resilience and survival skills. The judge listened impassively, occasionally making notes. When the Millers' lawyer presented the petition to foster both boys together, Mrs. Marshall grew visibly agitated. Those boys aren't even related, she protested aloud, earning a sharp glare from the bench. Mrs. Marshall, You will respect court procedure, the judge warned before turning back to the miller's lawyer. While I understand the desire to keep these children together, given their shared experience, I'd like to hear more about why you believe a joint placement serves their best interests. Eli held his breath as Mrs. Bennet was called to testify. She spoke professionally about the trauma bond between the boys, how separation could trigger regression, and how Eli's progress was clearly dependent on Liam's presence. The marshal's lawyer cross-examined her aggressively. Isn't it true that William Donovan essentially abducted a younger child and isolated him from society? How can we be sure this relationship is healthy and not exploitative? Before Mrs. Bennet could answer, the judge cut in. That characterization contradicts the evidence presented. The record shows William provided care, education, and protection to a child who was abandoned by his legal guardian. The marshals whispered heatedly to their lawyer, who then requested permission to question Eli directly. I would like to hear from the younger child about his experiences. Eli's heart hammered as the judge considered the request. She studied him thoughtfully before nodding. I will speak with Elias in my chambers, privately. No lawyers, just myself and the court advocate. The judge's chambers felt less intimidating than the courtroom. Bookshelves lined the walls and a photo of a golden retriever sat on her desk. She smiled at Eli as he sat nervously in a large chair. Elias, I want you to tell me about Liam. Not what anyone told you to say, but what you really think and feel. Can you do that? Eli nodded solemnly. Did Liam ever hurt you? Ever scare you? Never, Eli answered immediately. He saved me. My mom, she left me. He found me. He taught me how to read, how to fish, how to be brave. The judge took notes, her expression neutral. What about food? Were you hungry, living with him? Sometimes, Eli admitted honestly. But Liam was always hungrier. He'd give me the bigger share, said I was still growing. Question after question came, gentle but persistent, probing into their life together. He answered truthfully, describing both the hardships and the moments of connection. If you could choose where to live now, where would it be? The judge asked finally. Eli looked her squarely in the eye. With Liam. And if it can be with the Millers too, that would be great. But Liam, he's my family. The simple declaration hung in the air between them. The judge watched him for a long moment before she nodded. Thank you for your honesty, Elias. You can return to the courtroom now. Back on the wooden bench, Eli waited anxiously as the judge returned to her seat. The marshals looked confident, the Millers apprehensive, and Liam looked resigned, as if expecting the worst possible outcome. The judge cleared her throat, silencing the murmurs before delivering her decision. I have one more request. William Donovan, please approach the bench. Liam walked forward with measured steps, his face a deliberate blank, the same carefully neutral expression he used when teaching Eli to check a snare or identify poison ivy, a mask that hid his vulnerability. The judge gestured for him to take the witness chair, her sharp eyes assessing him. William, she began, I would like to hear your perspective. Liam's gaze flickered briefly to the marshals before returning to the judge. What do you want to know, Your Honor? Let's start with why you ran away from the Marshall home 3 years ago. Liam's hands tightened imperceptibly on the arms of the chair. The silence stretched as he wrestled with words never spoken aloud in a formal setting. They seemed nice at first. he said finally, his voice low but steady. The first month was okay. Then, things changed. From the gallery, Mr. Marshall made a scoffing sound. The judge silenced him with a severe look before nodding for Liam to continue. Mr. Marshall had rules. A lot of them. Impossible ones. If I broke them, when I broke them, there were consequences. What kind of consequences? The judge asked gently. Getting locked in the basement. No food. Sometimes for days. Each statement seemed to cause him physical pain. He hit me if I cried. Mrs. Marshall watched. She would tell him when I wasn't learning my lesson. Mrs. Marshall shot to her feet. He's lying. We never... Mrs. Marshall, sit down, or I will have you removed, the judge commanded, her voice like steel. She turned back to Liam. Please continue. I reported it. My caseworker. Twice. Liam's voice hardened. Nothing happened. She told them what I'd said. It got worse after that. A woman stood from the back of the courtroom, middle-aged, professionally dressed, with a pained expression. Your Honor, may I address the court? My name is Janet Rivera. I am William's former teacher. The judge considered for a moment before nodding. Approach. Ms. Rivera walked forward, stopping beside Liam. I taught William in the 6th grade, before he disappeared. I reported suspected abuse to Child Protective Services 3 times. He would come to school with bruises, desperately hungry, sometimes unable to sit properly. Each time the investigations were closed as inconclusive. Mr. Marshall's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled him. Ms. Rivera, why are you here today? I've followed this case since I heard William was found, she answered. I failed him once by not pushing harder. I will not fail him again. The testimony shifted the atmosphere in the room. Even the marshal's confident posture faltered as Rivera presented documentation, dated emails to administrators expressing concern, and a personal log where she had recorded her observations. The judge then turned her questions to the Millers' preparedness to take on 2 traumatized boys. Robert Miller spoke of their extensive training in trauma-informed care. Sarah described the modifications they'd made to the house. Separate bedrooms that respected privacy but allowed for proximity and reassurance, and a garden space where the boys could apply their knowledge of the outdoors. We don't expect instant trust, Sarah emphasized. We are prepared for the long journey of healing, however long it takes. The judge deliberated for what felt like hours to Eli, though the clock showed only 20 minutes had passed when she returned. The courtroom fell silent. Having reviewed all testimony and evidence, I find the marshal's petition to regain custody of William Donovan to be without merit and potentially harmful. She fixed them with a stern gaze. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into past allegations of abuse, which appear to have been inadequately handled. Mr. Marshall's face went pale as the judge continued, turning to the matter of William Donovan and Elias Turner. I approve temporary guardianship to Robert and Sarah Miller, with a review in 6 months for a potential permanent placement. The sharp crack of her gavel made Eli jump. Just like that, their fate was sealed. Outside the courtroom, Eli found himself crushed in a hug between the Millers. Across the hall, Liam stood awkwardly as his caseworker signed papers, his expression one of cautious hope. When can he come home? Eli asked Sarah urgently. Today, she answered, her smile warm. We just need to finish the paperwork. That evening, Eli waited impatiently on the Millers' front porch, scanning the road for their car. When the car finally pulled up, Eli could barely contain himself. Liam emerged from the back seat, a small backpack holding his few belongings slung over one shoulder. He hesitated at the base of the stairs, uncertainty clouding his features. "Welcome home," Eli said simply, the words breaking through Liam's hesitation. That first night, in the new room they shared, neither boy slept much. They whispered across the space between their beds, processing the day's events, the strangeness of their new circumstances, and the profound relief of remaining together. "Do you think we can trust them?" Eli asked, his voice thin in the darkness. Liam was silent for a long moment. "I think we can try." Coming from him, it was a profound declaration of hope. The judge's gavel had sealed their legal fate, but the true measure of their new life would unfold in the days that followed, in the mundane moments of shared meals, tested rules, and trust cautiously extended and received. The spring sun warmed the miller's backyard as Eli carefully turned the soil in a garden bed. 6 months had transformed the bare winter property into a flourishing space, with vegetable beds lined with stones and herb sections marked with handmade signs. A small greenhouse stood proudly, built from reclaimed windows. "The tomato seedlings are ready," Liam called from the greenhouse door, carrying a flat of tiny plants they had started from seed. The boys had grown. Eli's face had lost its gaunt look of constant worry, while Liam stood taller, his perpetual vigilance softened into a healthy awareness. The Miller house had become, gradually and then suddenly, theirs as well. Sarah appeared on the back porch, holding a camera. "Perfect timing. Let's get a picture before you're completely covered in dirt." The boys stood awkwardly beside their garden creation, unaccustomed to being photographed. Sarah snapped several shots before showing them the digital screen. It was their first family photo in this new life. "Robert's bringing the paperwork over today," she mentioned casually, though her eyes shone with a restrained emotion. "If everything looks right, we can file for the adoption next week." The word still sounded foreign. Permanent adoption. After the judge's temporary placement had been extended, the Millers had approached the subject carefully, making it clear there was no pressure, that the boys could take all the time they needed to decide. "Can we go back to the cabin first?" Liam asked suddenly. "Before everything changes." The request surprised both Sarah and Eli. Liam rarely mentioned the cabin anymore, focused as he was on adapting to school, therapy sessions, and the new family routines. Sarah looked at him thoughtfully. "I think that can be arranged. I'll talk to Robert." The following weekend, the four of them were hiking through the familiar forest. The spring thaw had transformed the landscape from the snow-covered terrain where they were rescued, but Liam navigated with confidence, occasionally checking the tattered map he had kept all these months. "There," he said finally, pointing through the trees. The small cabin was still standing, defiant against the winter's assault. They approached slowly, Liam and Eli in the lead, the Millers a respectful distance behind. The door was swollen with damp and stuck fast, but it gave way to Liam's practiced shove. Inside, the cabin seemed frozen in time, ashes in the wood stove, Liam's handmade snares hanging on nails, the bark calendar still marking days long past. Eli went to the shelf where his carved fox once stood guard. "I still have it," he told Liam, "on my windowsill at home." Home. The word came out naturally, no longer referring to this cabin, but to the Miller's house with its warm kitchen, separate bedrooms, and shelves full of books. Liam nodded, picking up his grandmother's journal from beside the cot. He flipped through it quickly before offering it to Robert. There's useful knowledge in here, he said, a gesture heavy with symbolism, about plants, medicine, and things worth saving. Robert accepted the journal with due gravity. We can incorporate some of these into our garden. Honor your grandmother's knowledge. While the Millers explored the cabin's ingenious features, Liam pulled Eli aside. I needed to see this again, he confessed quietly. To remember it was real, that we survived. Eli understood completely. Sometimes the months in the wilderness felt like a dream, set against the backdrop of his current life of homework, television, and neighbors who dropped by with cookies. It was real, Eli affirmed. You saved me here. We saved each other, Liam corrected, his gaze taking in the small space that had sheltered their desperate, determined survival. But now, we deserve more than just survival. It was the closest Liam had come to explicitly accepting the adoption. Eli squeezed his hand in silent understanding. They gathered a few meaningful items. Liam's handmade tools, Eli's first successful snare, and the chess set with the mended king. Robert helped them secure the cabin properly, respecting its significance and ensuring it wouldn't fall into complete disrepair. As they walked back toward the trail where their car waited, Eli noticed Liam walking beside Robert, pointing out plants and explaining their properties. Sarah fell into step with Eli, her camera discreetly capturing the moment. He's teaching his dad, Eli observed, the paternal term feeling both strange and right on his tongue. Sarah smiled softly. That's how family works. Everyone has something to teach, something to learn. Back at the house that night, Sarah framed the new family photo. She placed it on the mantel, alongside older pictures of foster children who had passed through their lives. But unlike those other pictures, the frame she chose for theirs was permanent, not the temporary plastic stands used for the children who would eventually move on. Eli studied the image, his own cautious smile, Liam's protective stance beside him, and the garden they had built together visible in the background. It wasn't an ending, but a continuation of the bond forged in desperate circumstances, now blossoming in the safety of a chosen family. A year to the day after Liam had found Eli collapsed in the forest, the Miller house buzzed with quiet celebration. A homemade banner hung in the living room, reading Family Versary in Sarah's artistic script. The dining table was laden with Eli's favorite foods, and a small pile of wrapped gifts waited on the sideboard. Is this really necessary? Liam asked, though the corners of his mouth twitched with suppressed pleasure. Absolutely, Robert affirmed, setting plates on the table. Important days deserve to be marked. The adoption had been finalized 3 months earlier, in a judicial proceeding that was worlds away from their first legal experience. This time there were smiles, a judge who shook the boys' hands, and official certificates declaring them Liam Miller and Eli Miller, legally and permanently part of the same family. The doorbell rang, and Eli ran to answer it. Mrs. Bennet stood on the porch, a gift bag in her hand. I wouldn't miss this, she said, accepting Eli's enthusiastic hug. Though no longer their official caseworker, she remained a steady presence in their lives, visiting regularly to check on their progress. As they gathered around the table, Robert raised a glass, offering a toast to finding family in unexpected places and the courage it takes to build a new life together. Later, after the cake had been served and presents opened, the boys retreated to their rooms. Their doors were adjacent along the upstairs hall, each decorated to reflect their emerging personalities. Liam's door displayed a detailed drawing of medicinal plants he had created in art therapy. Eli's was covered in colorful paintings from his elementary school class. Eli sat cross-legged on his bed, examining his anniversary gift from the Millers, a quality compass in a polished wooden box engraved with his name. Through the open doorways, he could see Liam arranging his own gift, a set of professional botanical illustration supplies, on his desk. "Do you ever miss it?" Eli asked suddenly. "The cabin? Being on our own?" Liam considered the question with his characteristic thoughtfulness. Sometimes, he admitted, he missed the quiet, the simplicity. He glanced around his room with its comfortable bed, well-stocked bookshelf, and science fair trophies. But not enough to go back. It was true for both of them. The transition hadn't been without its struggles. Liam had bristled at the structure and authority of school, while Eli still sometimes woke from nightmares of being left behind. But through every setback, the Millers had proven their commitment, their patience never wavering. "Mrs. Bennett says there's a new kid coming to stay next week," Eli mentioned, referring to a short-term foster placement. The Millers had discussed it with both boys beforehand, ensuring they felt secure in their permanent status before agreeing. "He's younger than you," Liam observed. "5, I think Sarah said." A thoughtful expression crossed Eli's face. "He's probably scared." "Probably," Liam agreed. After a moment, Eli picked up the wooden whistle Liam had carved for him during their first week in the cabin. He had kept it all this time, a talisman from the beginning of their friendship. "I'm thinking of giving him this," he said, running a thumb over the smooth wood. "So he knows he can call for help if he needs it." Liam crossed the space between their rooms and gently took the whistle, examining it. "It's yours. You don't have to give it away." "I know," Eli said simply, "but I don't need it anymore. I know you'll hear me now, whistle or not." The meaning of the gesture, passing on the first symbol of safety they had ever known, hung in the air between them. Liam nodded, understanding without another word. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on Eli's door. It was Sarah, holding a framed photograph they had never seen before. "I found this while I was organizing some old albums," she explained, handing it to him. It was the photo from their visit to the cabin. In it, Liam was showing Robert a medicinal plant. Their backs were to the camera, but their postures clearly indicated a transfer of knowledge, of respect, flowing in both directions. Sarah had captured the wild setting, the cabin visible in the distance, the connection between past and present. "I thought you might want this for your rooms," she suggested. "A reminder of where you've been and how far you've come." After she left, the boys studied the photograph together. "We made it," Eli said softly. Liam's arm came to rest around his shoulders, a gesture now natural after months of learning to accept and give physical affection. "We made it." They were no longer just survivors, the wounded boy and his reluctant savior, but brothers building a future neither could have imagined in those desperate days in the forest. The doors between their rooms remained open, a symbol of their enduring connection, even as they grew into their own separate selves. Outside, a spring rain began to fall, nurturing the garden they had planted together. The wild knowledge of their past taking root in the fertile soil of their new life.